McKeown, yeah.
Hello and welcome, everybody. And my name's Leah Zalams, and I'm the host of Z Access TV, a YouTube channel designed to help teach women in business the core skills and attitudes that we need to be able to create success on our terms. And thank you for joining us today. If you're on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, let us know in the comments. Make sure you can hear us. And today I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing the wonderful Anne McKeown, who is one of Sydney's leading empowerment coaches, specifically for women and in leadership, in business, in life. Welcome, Anne.
Oh, thank you, Leah. It's great to be here. I really admire what you do for with women in business, and I'm delighted to be part of it. So thanks for the invite.
Oh, well, look, let me just give people some context before we start get started, Anne. And so, as I said, that you focus on mindset coaching. You're the founder of To Empower to Co, and that's really interesting because my company name is Empower to Go. So we have obviously a very strong connection to the idea of power and owning our power and bringing that to life. So I really love sharing that with you. And you specialize in empowering women to reignite the spark in their lives and their work by shifting the psychological barriers that hold them back. So you've developed a step-by-step process for success that you share with individuals and teams. And your main driver is to be a good role model for your two daughters, Maurice and Megan. Mm-hmm. And they're the two M's in To Empower. And so I'm sure they're very close to your heart with every heartbeat, as it were. And you've already published a book already, and the founder of Sydney Women's Self-Empowerment Meetup, which has over 600 members. And so welcome, Anne, today.
Well, thank you. And thank you for that lovely introduction.
Yes. So we've themed our conversation today around what is it that gets in our way in terms of in business, in money, in creating that success that we decide we want and to create it on our terms. So I'm really keen to sort of dig into a bit of background as to start with, who you work with and exactly how you work with them, and also what has driven you to make this your main thing as the main focus in your business life today.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'll start with the last question first. So I moved to Australia. Obviously, I'm from Scotland, and I was a stay-at-home mum for a number of years because my husband traveled and we didn't have family here. And I hit 50, menopause, kids were at high school, not needing me so much. And I actually hit a spell where I felt quite lost and lonely in my own head. And so I realized that I needed to reach out and connect. And I thought, I wonder if there are other women that feel the same. And I was surprised at the huge response I got when I started my meetup group. That so many women were struggling. And so I hadn't actually really intended to start a business. It was more about building a community in the beginning. And what I realized was the big thing that was holding us all back was our mindset. That what we believed, that what society was telling us as a stay-at-home mum, or that we'd lost our confidence. And so as I ran the meetup, I did NLP in the 90s. I've done positive psychology through the 2000s. As a young woman, people always used to come to me with their problems. So I went to see a coach, and she said, why don't you do the coaching?
So what drove you to choose going to see a coach? as opposed to what might have been a normal path, or I guess a more well-trodden path of, oh, I'm not sure who I am or what I want. I better go and see a therapist. So I'm curious, because they are very different roles, that of therapy and that of coaching. So I'm curious as to, what did someone refer you or make a suggestion to see someone in particular, or I'm curious to hear.
No, I think it was through my own self-development. They say every coach needs a coach. We all need someone to help us, and I know that therapists and counselors tend to focus on the past. I was already focusing too much on the past, and it was keeping me stuck. I needed, like in the way we go to fitness coaches, we want them to push us beyond what we think are our own limits. I was aware of
but there's an attitude too that is not necessarily everybody's attitude of wanting to be pushed. So I'm just listening for between the lines, Anne, as to, like drawing out the skills and attributes that you have because of the person you are, because of your life experiences and who you've become to be making these decisions at this point.
Yeah, I think a big part of it was because I used to work in corporate. I was a sales coach for BP Oil in the UK. And then becoming a stay-at-home mom actually really dented my confidence, because I lost touch with technology and stuff. And I did a lot of volunteering. And at the time that was good because I was around the kids and here for them and everything. But I reached a stage where there was something within me when I hit 50 that was like, I haven't achieved what I thought I would have by now, or I haven't really had the chance to fully blossom into the person that I want to be. And everybody talks about 50 as if it's old, but I still felt like about 30 on the inside. And I thought, I need to find something that I would like to do when my kids move on, so I don't become a clingy mother, and that I have a sense of satisfaction with myself so that I don't become a miserable partner either. So yeah, there was probably a lot of it was internally driven. But I knew I had a choice of either moving backwards or moving forwards. And backwards for me was a sense of being stuck and leading almost to depression. And moving forwards was looking to the future, pushing myself to learn new things. I've always had the mindset that there's no such thing as failure. It's just feedback. And so if I try something and it doesn't work, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. And look, I do, it's a theory and we all do, but I try not to. And I say, okay, I'm going to go into this with the intention of almost not getting it right. But we've
got to fall over. We've got to, bruise our knees, before we can, stay on the bike without falling off. And I think that failing forward and the rate, like doing enough, like failing enough to minimize the time of like not being good at what you do. I think that takes that mindset of I'm failing forward, and that failure is feedback, and therefore there's no such thing as I failed, therefore I'm bad and I should quit. Because this is the part that I wonder if you can remember, who first taught you that there is no such thing as failure per se, and particularly if you view failure as feedback. But that was only something I learned in adulthood, but that released me from so much self-criticism, and that actually released me from stopping myself as much as I had been before, right? Because who wants to fail? Who wants to be bad at something? But some people, and a lot of people, that's the universe telling me that I should do something else. So I'm interested, how we work with what's feedback that tells us that we should keep going, or what's the feedback that tells us we should change course, or what's the feedback that we we actually should quit? Because like this,
Yeah. I
so
think there are two
how you
things there.
navigate that.
There are external factors that feedback, right? So I've tried things in my business that didn't work, and either because people have told me they didn't want it, or they weren't willing to pay for it, or they just didn't want, so things evolved, and I thought, okay, well, that's not working, but so what do you want, and how can I shift this and move it forward, and see it as a process. I think we expect to be able to go from A to B very quickly. And the other thing is to give yourself time. I mean, I find in life as well as in business, the three things that we really need are time, energy, and money. And we're usually lacking one. So if we've got a lot of time, then we usually have energy, but maybe not so much money. If we've got lots of money, it's because we haven't got much time and we're working, so it's about I suppose, I don't want to use the word balance because everybody overuses that word, and it can be a challenging thing to create. But I think moving forward in a way that that feels right, and that almost, it's a process. I think, it's sort of like it is a journey, and there's all those cliches about it's a marathon and not a sprint. But I think we need to listen to that kind of advice. Because when things are not happening quickly, we beat ourselves up. And I actually think that is the biggest killer of every business. When people say, I can't do this, I'm a failure, it's not going to work. And then we make it a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, and I think that is also where expectations and coaching can actually set us up to have, like, it frees us in a lot of ways, but we've also got to grow into the person who can handle the bigger knocks.
Oh,
and we've got to grow our identity to become the person that can be that role, whatever that role is. Whether, like you were saying, you went to see a coach and then they suggested, well, why don't you become a coach? Because obviously they could see you had a lot of the basic skills and attributes that make a good coach.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to come back to what then shifted that from initially developing community to find like-minded women, looking at a career development, right, at 50, becoming a coach. But then what was the shift that it became like something you would create a business around?
Well, I kind of got to a stage where I was a bit sick of doing voluntary work, because the meetup was voluntary, and I didn't get paid. I was teaching a lot and giving a lot for very little, and I started to feel resentful. And I thought, this is terrible. I shouldn't feel resentful because I'm helping people, but I just did. And I think it's something that women in particular struggle with. We would never ask somebody to come and paint our wall, and then once we decide whether we like it or not, we'll pay them. But that's what we do with coaches, and we ask for advice and expect to get it for free, and then choose whether we continue with that person or not. And I was running out of energy. And
well, it's out of balance, isn't it? When you're giving more, and there's an element, and also your needs change from, let's see who else feels like me or wants some company. But then as you develop and grow, and if you're doing all the giving and there's not coming much back, then where's the reciprocity?
That's right.
And so that's where the resentment is born. And but I guess this is how we learn what we like, what we don't like. If we don't get in the pool and give it a go,
that's
like
right.
If you hadn't put out, like I imagine it might have been Facebook notes or maybe some emails, posts rather, and see who turns up on a certain day. And so nobody might have turned up, but you were overwhelmed with interest. So you know, there was clearly appetite for community, but definitely coaching, and particularly women coaches, I think suffer this more than male coaches. And again, perhaps from a gender imbalance, perhaps from a self-image, perhaps with a whatever reason, the expectation that women are helpers. Right?
Yes,
we
carers.
totally are helpers. It's in our DNA.
Yes.
So how did you make that transition from free to paid, or from giving and voluntary to actually, well, I'm developing a business. So what became different for you?
You know what? It was a decision. It just became a decision. It was like, I'm actually not going to do things for free anymore. And then COVID hit, so I wasn't able to have the meetups in person, and we started to do things online, and there was so much online and there was so much for free, and I thought, you know what, I don't need to compete with this. And I actually had my best 2 years ever, which is probably a sad indictment in the fact that so many women were struggling. But it was also almost like when I stepped up my expectation and owned that I'm going to be a business owner, because I am, a good coach, but I'm going to charge what I feel I'm worth. Then actually I was inundated with inquiries in a way that I hadn't been when I was less expensive.
Isn't that interesting? But what I'm also hearing is that you had created the groundwork through the value you had given, even though those women that were part of your meetup, were they directly, did some of them become customers, or was it
yes
direct ripple effect potential,
yes,
outside
they
of that?
did. Some of them did. Yes.
So this is where there is that element of give first,
yes,
and then know that the universe does reward you for doing the right thing. There is an element of that, but how much time do you wait? And I think that certainly from my experience, Anne, because I think we've been at this probably for a similar kind of amount of time together, like creating our own paths. And so the biggest thing that I find that stops women is lack of traction fast enough.
Yes.
Like they might get one client, but if that doesn't build, and become automated, or the referral, and this business, it becomes too expensive in time, money, and energy to keep going if there isn't that consistent client flow. Right. And I think this is where COVID, as you say, there was a barrage of online meetings and meetups, and I was doing different things and, pulling people together and wanting to keep myself relevant and engaged, as much as anything. And then there's the proliferation of online courses and memberships, and, and now it's a real blended learning environment, isn't it? Where people expect something tangible online to support the coaching conversations.
Yes.
And then everyone, I find, is trying to find their way again to how do we do business in this living with COVID world. So I'm sort of curious to hear, like, once you started building your business, then what have been your key challenges that almost took you out, or caused you to question, or maybe it hasn't been that way either, for you?
Oh no, it definitely has. A lot of tears of frustration, and I think one of the biggest things for me was all the marketing and the technology. I spent thousands of dollars and hours on Facebook ads and marketing courses. I was then having to learn how to do all of this myself, and it's fine to say, well, get someone to help you, but if you're not making any money, and if you don't know what to do, then you don't know what to tell them to do. And so a big part, and you hit on this earlier, was that the personal development brings the business development, or personal growth. Your business will not grow if you don't grow. I am not the same person that I was when I started that meetup and was, insecure and full of self-doubt and whatever. I've definitely, I've learned, I've failed, I've got back up, I've, plodded on. Some things have worked, some haven't. And I think we no longer just have to be an experienced coach or have a coaching qualification. We have to be marketers, we have to be speakers, we have to be authors, we have to be, and this, and I found all of that really exhausting and time consuming and not my natural strength.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because we know through coaching that working in our strengths and our superpowers is where we are most effective energetically, financially, impact wise. And yet there is so much that needs to be done in that business development arena in order to be able to work in your strengths, as in to deliver the coaching. And I think that's why a lot of coaches end up working for coaching organizations, if they can get the work, because they don't want to do the do to learn to do the do.
Yeah, exactly that. It's exactly.
And everything takes time, and that's why also for me, as well as the leadership development I've developed a specific targeted lead generation process. So I've actually got a tangible service to sell, because that's the biggest missing link for so many knowledge workers or specialist consultants who have so much good oil, but if you're not finding the people who need, want, and are willing to pay for what you have, then you can't survive as a business owner.
That's right. Or if they're not finding you. So if they Google for a coach and your name doesn't come up, then it's. And I actually made the decision at the end of 2020. I'd had such a full-on year that I then said that I'm going to get a virtual assistant. I'm going to get a team in the Philippines to just do all the marketing and that for me. And it is a chicken and egg, because you think, I pay them money and then watch the growth, but I'm paying when I'm not really earning enough, I'm not making enough profit. Or do I do it all myself and waste the time? And I'm very much of the opinion now that if you can get other people to come in and be the experts, and you don't have to start super expensive, even just a university student that's looking for some experience, because it really boosts your confidence if you've got a bit of a team around you. I mean, my VA started to say, I love working with you, I love what you're doing, and I was like, that was, it's, whereas in your own head you're like, is what I'm doing good enough, and do people want what I'm offering? And so even just having one other person to bounce ideas off, who'll say, I can make this better for you, because that's my superpower.
Yes. And I think, again, that is that's a stage that you get to, like when you've tried to do it all yourself often. Right, because the other challenge is, right, because as you said, we're either using time, money, or energy. Everything takes energy. And so, but the other challenge I see is that and women in particular, having a less than perspective. There are skills that we need, as we know. So we're going to pay for courses and pay for coaches, but they will often make those coaches and people that are more successful than them almost like make them their higher power or their authority figure. Then you end up paying a lot more money, trusting the dialogue and trusting the promises, and then still not getting results, and that breeds resentment even more.
And I did that early on. I did that, tens of thousands of dollars on programs, and actually realizing the people I was learning from, the marketers, they were young, they were male, they were
They had confidence and certainty, Anne.
yeah,
Why they had confidence and certainty.
yeah.
So, I mean, so I'm curious now, from where you sit, you've got your rhythm of how you're working and what you will accept, what you won't accept. I mean, if we've got women who are either, watching this live or watching the replay, do post your questions in here, because, Anne and I will come back and we will answer those questions as best we can. But one of the questions that, continually does come up is, well, how much does it cost to get started, and where do I start, and how do I start? If I wanted to do what you do, what would you recommend today based on where you sit?
So where I started, the meetup group is a good idea because it immediately puts you out as a leader. They say the person in the room holding the marker is the one that's making the money.
Yes, I've heard that one too. So the marker or the mic, right?
Yeah. And so I was immediately elevated to leader. I didn't really see myself as a leader at the time, but that's what happened. And these women said to me, could you coach me one-on-one? I don't want to share everything in the group. And then I did some group work online. And as I said, it's a process, and I think one thing leads to another. So giving yourself the chance to do that. The other thing I did was, and you've probably been told this too, don't coach friends and family because you're too close and you could be part of the problem. So I reached out to friends and said, if you know of a woman that's struggling, and initially I just started with midlife. I dealt with women that were struggling in midlife. The business part of it came for me when my business started to grow. Then these women were saying to me, how did you do that? And then I was able to tell them what had worked and what hadn't. So again, it's kind of an evolution. Then I was asked to do some talks for corporations through a friend, and that opened another door. So there are different pathways, but I think a great way to start to build your confidence. And I said to these women, I will do this coaching, but you need to give me honest feedback, because I was then building my course, my program, what works, what doesn't, what parts of the NLP training I could use, what parts of the positive psychology I could use. And then I started to get the same, oh, we love this and that wasn't so good. And so I started to be able to put together what was working. And once you get results, that just really boosts your confidence. I mean, I've never had anybody ask me to see my coaching certificates, of which I've got quite a few, because and a lot of women will come, oh, I'd love to be a coach, but I need to do this course and that course, and it will take me another 10 years. But you can start, and if you're getting results for people and they're willing to write a testimonial, that boosts your confidence so much.
It does indeed. And, I'm listening for your language, and I'm hearing a real ownership. And this is one of your superpowers too, is you take real ownership for your clients' results. And that just comes through loud and clear.
Oh, thank you.
And,
sure.
because we also know that they need to meet us halfway. They've got to do the work. There's got to be a willingness to be curious, a willingness to question, is there another way that we could think about this? And I loved your focus on changing how they're thinking, right? Mm-hmm. The psychology aspect of the change process. Because yes, it's our feelings that muck us up, but it's the meaning we make of those feelings that ultimately then
come from our thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. And so I find that it's a gift to be curious and a gift to be willing, because some of the women who are successful or have been really super successful, often their ego and their self-image becomes such an armor, becomes so it's that stops them from actually the humility is on the other side of that.
Yes,
So
which
it's
is
almost that you've got two big like barriers to change and things that get in the way. It's like we don't have enough confidence or self-belief when we're thinking, could I, should I, could I do this? When we're first beginning. And then you get some success or maybe a lot of success, and suddenly that image then is stopping you from, even when that's crumbling beneath you, they're the ones that really need the help. But it's like that ego and the self-image, it needs to, we need a breakthrough.
They can't, it's like cracking a nut.
There's no willingness. It's like that, this thinking that got me here is what got me here.
Yes,
and
that's right.
So I've got to be willing.
That's right.
Just to say maybe, but then that takes trust. And I find that a lot of women who have created a lot of success often, and now if they've had experiences where people have let them down or done the dirty, it's like the trust has been broken.
Yes.
This is what is paramount between coach and client, or boss and employee, or husband and wife, or in any relationship. Trust sits at its core. But just coming back to your absolute responsibility that I'm hearing that you take with your clients, that I'm sure is one of the things that attracts people to you and holds people to you, is that you've got them.
Yeah. And what I say is, I'll walk alongside you. I mean, I can't do it for you. Nobody could do it for me. But I'll walk alongside you, and I won't give up on you, and I won't let you give up on yourself. And so there, I suppose that kind of does build a bit of trust. But we all have blind spots. This is what I think people don't realize, is that, and you just said it there, whatever the relationship, our relationship with ourselves, with our partners, with our colleagues, with our family, and we can't grow unless we're willing to acknowledge our blind spots and do something about them. And rather than seeing it as criticism, and that's where this armor comes up, that if we can go at it with a willingness to say, help me uncover my blind spots and move past them. Because it's like in a car, if you can't see in the blind spot, you could end up crashing. And that's what we do in life. And coaches help you recognize your blind spot, and we can do it in a very...
And there's always new ones, aren't there? There's always new blind spots. It's a bit like, and I think that's the other thing too, that I always say to clients that, look, I don't expect you to have to need me constantly forevermore. Like, this is why we work in a program, like a step-by-step program, so that we can actually monitor and measure, and ultimately you are upskilling to then be at a point where you won't need me in the same way that you need me initially.
That's right, because they're self-coaching. They then learn to that. I mean, I do the same. It's, I will teach you this. And then if you keep repeating the lessons, you won't need me. You'll be self-coaching. And in fact, they can then share it. A lot of the women that I work with, they want to teach their teenage kids. Golly, I wish I had learned that when I was younger. We can help.
A lot of them are thinking skills and communication skills, which, whether it's business or family or work, it's all about communicating effectively so that everybody wins. Very much so. But I'm just conscious of the time as well. We've gone 30 minutes now, and so I'm really also want to encourage people that if you want to connect with Anne and learn more about your work. So what's the best way for people to connect with you?
You can check out my website. I actually offer a free 30 minutes chat to see if I can help you and if we're a good fit. And that's just annemckeown.com.
So www.
ANNE
Yeah.
McKeown.com. And I actually have a free mini course on there, and I have a free ebook on there. And so there's plenty of resources for people as well.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that is the good thing about the, I guess, the evolution of online availability of access anywhere, anytime, and then the support of the, you know, personal or group coaching. And I think this is where the best of, when you have someone that has that experience and that has made those investments to develop the resources, you're really getting a you know, a great bang for your buck, as it were, aren't you?
Thank you, Leah. Yes, yes.
Well, thank you, Anne. I've really enjoyed connecting with you, and please do connect with Anne on LinkedIn or on Facebook as well, and check out Anne's website, and we shall speak again very soon, Anne.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure. Yeah, keep up the good work.